Hello, Doug from Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds, and today I am hanging out with Richard Whitters. He is the senior art director for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and he's spending his time with us today to talk about art and nerdy stuff and D&D and whatever else comes up. Reminder to everybody too, if you have questions, put question in front of it in the chat so I can see it. And how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Yeah.
Cool.
How are things over there on the other coast?
Oh, cold and snowy in Cleveland here. It's about 10 degrees today. So Richard successfully fought off the morning maple syrup bear, and he survived. So he's with us today. Yes, pretty much anybody that plays D&D 5th edition, I'm sure you're familiar with his work from Out of the Abyss, and he also worked for Magic, and now he's kind of in charge of the whole shebang over there as far as art direction for D&D.
Well, actually, that's a good thing to mention. We actually kind of share it up. To start with, I'm a senior art director, but we actually have two.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I did not know that.
Yeah. So I do a lot of the concept art and sort of when Chris Perkins and Adam and I are working on the story. I do some artwork myself. Sean Wood does artwork for us, or we bring in artists to do some artwork for us. So we do all the sort of concept art type of stuff like that. Kate Irwin actually art directs like the book itself.
Oh, okay.
And all that kind of thing. So a lot of times we'll give Kate stuff to put in the book or give her the reference for her to commission by and stuff like that. But Kate does the book stuff and quite a bit of art directs, quite a bit of the licensing stuff too. That we kind of share that back and forth. And then Shauna Narciso does all the marketing art, which is sort of like the big splash pieces.
Oh, okay.
And she commissions the covers.
Oh.
So we kind of, so there's three of us, not just me.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
And they're both smarter than me too. So
so I'd imagine, all of that kind of like design work is very collaborative and back and forth. Where like, art has always been a huge part of D&D, and so it must be interesting to not only like get your inspiration from what they're writing and designing, but also to give that back and I imagine that influences and inspires the writers and story creators too. Is that a lot of it?
Oh, totally. That's actually a thing that we were just chatting about yesterday. One of our next stories coming up, Adam Lee is working on right now. And we were discussing that kind of like it sort of starts with in this case him, where he's got the ideas, the starting ideas. And then I have some artists coming in March who will take his ideas and do a bunch of drawings and all that kind of stuff, do a bunch of the things that he's kind of looking for. And then he'll go back into, based on what they've drawn, he'll go back into the writing. Because sometimes the drawings sort of direct you of like, the artwork is sort of like, this is really cool, we have to use this. So it can affect the importance of stuff. It can affect like what you actually leave out or put in. So it's sort of a weird back and forth. And it's always a challenge trying to get the right balance.
You had talked about on a Dragon Talk back in October, because you guys were talking about the Whiz Kids. I don't know the actual name, but like the classic things with like the owl bear and that.
Yeah.
And you'd spoken about how like, a big part of 5th edition is looking back at D&D history, and with that kind of nostalgia and like bringing that in. Is that a big part of all? It seems like that's a big part of like a lot of the design and art direction and story is like really embracing the roots of D&D history.
Oh, yeah.
Is that true in the art as well? Like, not just those WizKids things, but like all the projects. Like, hey, let's go back and look at like how did they used to look at a lich or beholder or whatever.
For me, it is for sure. I'm always the one who's bringing up weird stuff. It's like, what kind of monster could we use here? And I'm like, Froghemoth, or like something, like some weird old thing. But I love that stuff. I think those are the things that are really unique to D&D that D&D can hang their hat off of.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like strange, weird, like some of the strange, weird older monsters. And we're always going through. We see. I wish I could spoil you some stuff right now, but I can't because I have a drawing
Sure.
right. I have a drawing right here. I can't show you yet, but I will.
We'll
Someday.
see it in time.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so much weird old stuff in D&D. Yesterday they were talking about something called a tween, which I had completely forgotten about, but it's like some kind of incorporeal symbiote that like attaches itself to a person, but it's like a shimmery image outside of it. It's from like the Fiend Folio, I think. It's like
Oh,
there's just
okay.
so many weird old monsters.
Yeah, the Fiend Folio is just a bunch of cool. Uh, yeah, I always love one of my favorite artists in the Fiend Folio is Russ Nicholson. I think he's still doing stuff nowadays, but love his stuff. Um,
There's a documentary a friend of ours is working on called Eye of the Beholder: The Art of Dungeons and Dragons,
yeah,
and
I've heard of that.
yeah, it's supposed to. They really want to premiere it at Gen Con. I think it is locked in to premiere there this year. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's basically what it's all about. It's just like they talk to artists and people that were influenced by the art and of D&D and like how it's different than regular art. And I wonder if what your opinion is. It's like when you look at a painting, you can appreciate it, but like with game art, it really has to evoke that feeling, and you're like, I can play a character in the world that this art is representing.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, when I first came over to D&D, one of the first things we worked on was Out of the Abyss.
Awesome adventure.
Um, and one thing I really liked was the little character. There's little character portraits I did in there of
Mm-hmm.
Jimjar and Shushar and all those kind of characters. Um, I I think at the time I did about 33 because I remember I was talking to Adam and I was like, well, I have time to do these tonight when I go home. How many do you have? And he's like, 33. I was like, oh god.
Those are really well liked though. Those character portraits from there.
Well, that was the funny thing is I think and I remember when I brought them in the next day, Adam and Perkins really loved the sketches because I think it's really easy to like look at some of those faces and then you immediately want to like role play them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have these weird expressions and they have all that kind of stuff. So we're always kind of discovering like strange things like that with the artwork of like, well, how do we really leverage this artwork so that our fans will see like an NPC character and they just get a headshot, but they get the character and then they go, like
Yeah.
completely, it's just like a snap to DM it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a huge aid to play. Not only those, just all the art of the demon lords and everything. We did have a super chat. Thank you to Shasta1337 or Shasta Elite. I don't know how he pronounces it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a question for you. Would you be interested in drawing a character of mine for commission? Also, Tabaxi are his favorite race in D&D.
Oh, right on. Um, yes, our Tabaxi designs were done by Sean Wood for the when we went into Chult.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's this is a good chance to answer a question like that. I've been trying to figure out. I don't really do commissions, and I would be kind of remiss if I said like, yeah, I've got time to do this for you or this for that. But I've been trying to figure out a way where maybe I can do some of that stuff for charity or things like that.
Oh,
We have
that'd be
like
awesome.
extra life charity. I've also had several people ask me about like, is there a book of my sketches and things like that. So I'm kind of working on that to see what we can do to maybe get something out and put it through to charity. Um, but if I tell you like technically, Wizards kind of owns my hands. Um, so I could do like a commission for somebody for charity, and then that would be good. But I don't really take they get me covered. I don't really
Yeah.
take commissions. They get me covered.
That's a wonderful idea, though, to tie it in with charity and stuff like that. Plus, guys, just follow Richard on Twitter because he shares a lot of his sketchbook drawings and things like that. So I'm sure there's something that you might find cool for a character, or maybe it'll inspire a new character that you hadn't thought of before.
Yep. And don't be shy telling me about your character.
Yeah, it's not just D&D stuff too. He's got Modak. He's drawn Cthulhu. So there's comics, and it expands beyond. That's just his day job. He can. I'm sure he can create all kinds of art.
I love all the different stuff.
Yeah.
I'm the mega nerd.
I like the Modak one. That was a particular favorite of mine. I just think that's a cool character. So
Yeah, I just love I love the weird stuff.
I was just gonna kind of segue into that. Like a lot of your stuff that I like, especially, is like, yeah, the characters things are cool, but it's like there's a lot of weird stuff in D&D and just pop culture in general and fantasy.
Yeah.
That seems fun to create that kind of art.
Yeah, like it was funny. Cynthia Shepard, who is one of the art directors on Magic and a really amazing artist herself. We were talking yesterday actually about how the two of us are kind of different ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very like sort of realistic painter and sort of does setup and lighting and has a model and stuff. And I start with like shapes and like, crazy.
But there is a realism to that's actually something I'm curious about. Is like drawing humans and even elves and things. It's like, well, they're humanoid and we understand that, but it's like, to imagine the biology, like your owl bear is a perfect example. It's like, the original classic first edition Monster Man. It's like, okay, that doesn't really look terrifying, but it's like, your owl bear. It's like, well, what would it look like if an owl and a bear? Like, it looks a hell of a lot scarier than that original thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of thing. And I've seen there was one of our artists, I think it might have been Bryn Metheny, or I forget who it was now. But they did an owl bear too that was much more like sort of realistic combo of an owl and a bear. So
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the things that for me is one of the challenges that we have. In one game, an owl bear might be like your cute pet, like Waffles, from the
Yeah,
Waffle
and then
Cake.
Chris Perkins will try to kill it.
Yeah, exactly. But in somebody else's game, like your medieval knights going through a dark forest, and then this thing howls like, oh, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh my god, this is a horrible monster. And we have some of the same thing with like sometimes our beholders are really just kind of alien, disconnected, creepy monsters, but then we have like Xanathar, and on the cover of Xanathar's book, he's sort of like looking at his little fish and
Mm-hmm.
smirk in his face.
Well, that's one of the best things about D&D, and I think it's kind of always been like that, but now it's like really permeated the gaming culture, is that focus on the narrative. And it's like, yeah, all the stuff in the books and everything, it's like that's your baseline, but it's like the game is really your own. So like whenever you start playing, even the published stuff, it's like, people ask questions in Nerdarchy a lot too. It's just like, well, how do you stick to the published stuff? It's like the second you start playing, it's your game. Like if you want to
Yeah,
change things, if you want, maybe the players like make Demogorgon have a change of heart or something. It's like it just depends on how you're. You know what I'm saying? It's like
yeah,
it's not set in stone.
yep. There's always like just rolling a 20,
Yeah.
and that could change an entire game. Like somebody just rolls a 20. Um, I had a classic thing last week where I was DMing, and I of course had I kind of wing it when I DM, so I write a
Me too.
few ideas for encounters and have a few notes, very minimal. But one of the things I took time on was I had these like five NPCs, and I named them, and I was like, oh, this little NPC is like this, and this little NPC is like this. And as I went around the table, they met them, and they were going to have a little battle. And as I went around the table, it was like natural 20. That NPC's dead. Natural 20. That NPC's dead. There's three natural 20s, and they just wiped out most of my NPCs that I'd made. So that's the kind of stuff that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, these will be great characters for the story going forward. And it's like, nope, they're all
Yep.
dead. One ran away.
You never know. And then it's like just like the farmer that they pass on the road is like, oh, we're interested in that guy. Like, really, that guy? Okay.
Yeah.
That's it makes me as a DM, like I've heard Satine say, because she's an artist too. Like a lot of times, even while she's DMing, she might like have trouble describing in words something, so she'll just sketch out what she's talking about. Do you incorporate that into your DMing? Like, well, let me just draw it for you guys. I'll show you what I mean.
Uh, I do that some. like sometimes I'll make like a really nice map for them, and sometimes during the game I'll sketch some things. A lot of times I'll sketch out the characters after we play, whatever, because that's when their personalities start coming out.
Sure.
Um, but I have no lack of communication skills when it comes to DMing because I'll do a bunch of different voices and
Oh, cool.
accents, and I'll jump around and I'll stand up and run around if I need to. I sometimes or a lot of times when I'm gaming, I get a few players. My last game, I had about 8 players, so I just we play at the office in one of the big boardrooms.
Hmm.
And what I love is that everyone gets yelling and screaming and laughing so hard that we inevitably have somebody like peeking in and going like, "Are you guys? What are you guys doing in here?" And
We're
like,
fighting dragons here, man.
yeah, it's like this is our game. You're supposed to scream and yell and
Well, that's gotta be a pretty cool pool of players to play with, right
yeah,
there at the office. It's like, no, we're working.
yeah.
We're playing. We're just playing D&D.
Well, I usually do it like in the evening, and then we go from like something like 7 till 10 or 11 or something like that.
Nice.
But yeah, last game we had was it, Chris Ron, who's a magic artist, Danny Hartel, who does costuming for the Penny Arcade
Fantastic job.
stuff, uh, and Tyler Jacobson, who's done quite a few of our D&D covers.
Hmm.
Alyssa Grant, who's part of the Penny Arcade C team there. Matt Danner and his wife Alana Danner, and Matt works on magic with like the marketing stuff, and Ari and Adam, who are both writers in the D&D. So that was our last group, and they're all creative folks. So everybody's like drawing on their character sheet and doing stupid voices, and you know.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a good artist in your group too. You're like, can you draw my character?
Oh, totally. And we had like and Adam draws too. Adam Lee. He
Hmm.
sort of came from he did greeting cards and cartoons and stuff like that too. So everyone's kind of doodling and making dumb voices and stuff. But,
The chat just jumped on me. I just saw a comment. Let's see. Rich Kaneda was one of our moderators. Says Richard Whitters dozens of short stories and adventures based just on staring at your art.
oh, thank you.
And, here's a question. This is from Andy Komu. Do you build a character's personality after you have the drawn longs for it? I don't know what that means. Or do you have an idea of the type of character personality, then start drawing there? So I guess we kind of just answered that. We're saying like, well, after you play a little bit, but for products and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question when it comes to products because definitely you have to figure out who the character. For me, anyway, I need to figure out who the characters are before I draw them, and you don't think of it, but it informs everything like their stance, like how they stand or how they like hold themselves or what look might be on their face or whether they're looking directly at you or sort of looking away in a dodgy way. Um, but yeah, definitely, you got to know who the characters are to kind of capture them correctly. Otherwise, I think you're just kind of drawing a pretty picture and it doesn't quite have a heart to it. It's
Okay,
strange, but yeah, yeah, for sure. I
that makes
always
sense.
if there's nothing there, I'll make something up.
And I saw somebody said they had a question about charity, but I don't see it. Oh, here we go. This is from Zerift Gaming. D&D rally for charity towards mental health, a good idea or a bad idea? I don't. Is that something that they're doing, or is he asking if that is a good idea? I'm not sure.
I am. I'm not sure. I know we just had the Bell. I think Bell has their yearly thing. Just had their yearly thing just recently for supporting mental health.
Well, probably anything for charity is a good idea.
Yeah, is that's that's like I was saying to you earlier. I have things where I actually love that avenue when people are like, could you do this or could you have time to do that? Or I'll just say like, I'd love to do that, and then I'll just give the profits to charity.
Hmm.
Um, and I know the charity we usually go with is Extra Life.
Yeah,
Extra Life
you guys have
Foundation.
raised a ton of money for Extra Life. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of good folks work on that stuff. Um, but yeah, there's there's I'm good with a lot of charities. The who I'm there was an article a while back. It was Autism Nova Scotia, which is sort of back. Nova Scotia is back where I'm from, and somebody had sent me an article on that where they were using D&D to help kids with autism sort of communicate,
Oh,
learn
okay.
communication skills and stuff. So as we immediately get a hold of them and sort of like, hey, let's get you guys some books and what can we do to help you out? So I love that stuff.
Didn't the yeah, you had designed the grung for the one grung above.
Hmm.
Isn't that
Yes.
isn't there something on DM's Guild that's charity for that too? Like I think there's quite a few things where like all the proceeds go to Extra Life, like that Lost Kenku that
Yep.
just came out.
Yeah. Sean's Lost Cancun one do that. That's a great venue for us because we can, like everybody else, we have our own little things where it's like this might never make it in a book, but it's a little idea I have,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great thing to be like, well, people might want to see this idea, and then also, oh, we can get a little money for charity for it, maybe. And so I love that avenue personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of strange because a lot of times I don't hear it so much anymore, but people are like, oh, you should put out more books. Wizards should put out more books or content or like, more adventures. It's like that's what the DM's Guild. It's like there's no shortage of adventures at the DM's Guild if you're looking for any level. And like you said, like we just said, a lot of them will go to charity and stuff too. So that's pretty awesome if you're looking for more content. There
Yeah, and
is
it
no shortage of
kind of scratches that itch. Like
it.
there's like with the books we do put out, which what I like, one of the things I like about 5e too, when I moved over, they we pace the release of our books. So it's not just like you're inundated with like too many things.
Yeah.
So, no, take some time and craft it. But there's also like Dragon Plus has some interesting content in it, and
Oh
the
yeah.
DMs Guild. The DMs Guild for me right now is serving sort of some of the old like Dungeon Magazine or even Dragon Magazine type of stuff, where people are
Absolutely.
playing with things. Uh, and I was addicted to those magazines. Like I ripped through
Oh me,
those.
yeah. I had the subscription, and I pull up many of those. There was my favorite one. There was a like cult. It was for 3.5, but they were like cults devoted to different monsters, like Beholder, Yuan Ti, and things.
Yeah.
And it was like a prestige class, so like the Sphere minion was the Beholder, and they'd like grow a little eye stalk out of as they grew up in level. Or and there was one. It was the Wakers of the Beast, and they were just like an apocalypse cult, and they just searched for like how do we awaken the Tarrasque. And I love that article. There's so many cool articles in those old Dragon magazines. But now we have the internet, so
Yeah. That, and that stuff was that's a really big thing. Uh, when I was back then, I was kind of new to DMing too. I'd flip through those magazines, and you might get like from a dozen ideas,
oh yeah.
um, and you'd say like, oh, this is really cool, and then you have to like go run your friends through it. And like I said, I'm sort of a seat of the pants DM,
Hmm.
so I, I've almost no organization, but I've been doing it like 30 years, so maybe I'm cocky.
No, I hear that a lot. I mean, I do that, and a lot of people ask us like, "How do you organize stuff?" And it's funny when they ask Dave. It's because I've seen his notes from Nerdarchy Dave, and it's like there is
Yeah.
no planning.
Yeah.
Even Jerry and from Penny Arcade, I was watching one of their table talk things, and when somebody asked them like, "How much prep do you do?" He's like, "I just none." I mean, really, most of it's just like knowing the setting,
Yeah.
because it's like players no, like the second you start playing, they will absolutely do something that you didn't think of, no
Oh,
matter how
absolutely.
many things you thought of. So it's just knowing the setting is it seems like the key thing.
I remember years ago, and this is maybe why, because your players you're like, oh, I don't know what these people are gonna do.
Yeah.
But I'd made this really nice map, um, and I was pretty proud of it, So I was like, oh, here's the map, and here's all these places that people can explore. And I put it down on the table, and then they were all looking at it, and then immediately one of my players, there was a little thing that said something like the unknown lands, and there was an
Yeah.
arrow pointing off the map, and they're like, we want to go to the unknown lands.
It's like it's unknown because I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm the
yeah, yeah,
DM. I don't know what's there.
exactly. So it was like, and that's sort of the thing for it. Like, you have no idea what players are gonna
Yeah.
do. So just roll with it.
Here's a question from Fantasy Grounds College. I think I know the answer to. What is your professional opinion as to why fantasy artwork is so expensive, especially when coupled into an RPG product? Because it's very difficult and time-consuming and in demand. So,
Oh, I
would be
see.
my
Like
guess.
from the terms of like a publisher who's paying
Yeah.
for the artwork and things. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, it's uh, yeah, definitely. There's. I mean, the basic ratio, like you just mentioned, is if somebody wants to like put their work into it and do really great artwork and say I want to make a living off this, then you got to equate it in some way to like more than $2 an hour
Right.
or that kind of thing. So when they start equating it to that, and then if you really take it as in terms of any other freelance job where you don't have health coverage and you don't have a lot of the sort of perks of that type of stuff, then freelancing becomes hiring a freelancer becomes a fairly expensive ideal. Um, but there is a lot of people. I like the idea whether it's even if it's like a small amount of pay. If there's a new artist and they have their full time job or they're full time at school and they're doing some stuff on the side, which I think is where a lot of people start. Um, then maybe that's a good grooming ground for a lot of new talent, and they can sort of try there. I don't recommend a lot of artists take work for free because there's a lot of people say, well, you can do this for the exposure, or you can do this sort of like on spec or something. But I'd say, but if you're a new artist and you're going to try something and somebody will give you a few bucks, it's great. And it also might help out some of the publishers who maybe don't have the budget for a lot of stuff. Um, yeah.
Yeah, because
But
that's a
yeah,
big part of a budget for things is the art.
yeah, for
Is
sure.
my understanding. But for all those people, I mean, there's a lot. Like we were talking before we went online, like a lot of the fan artists for things like Critical Role, it's like just that is just their hobby. I'm sure there's several, working or hopeful professional artists out there too. But some of the stuff these people just make because they just love the hobby, it's incredible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of times it's even like we had talked about that way back when we did Ravenloft, um, and that original map of Ravenloft Castle.
Mhm.
That wasn't like an assignment. That was somebody's labor of love. Like nobody makes a map that complex and fiddly unless they're just like consumed. It's like
You're
I
talking
need
about the
this.
original like AD&D one or the one that's in Curse of Strahd?
The original AD&D one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. The one we put in Curse of Strahd was really just sort of just a bit of a facelift to the original because we went and
Yeah.
looked to buy the original. But that original that's somebody's baby. And I
Hmm.
love that stuff about D&D.
Oh yeah.
So,
So you'd mentioned earlier about like all, a lot of the live stream gaming going on. We were talking about it a little bit
yep.
before we were offline. When are you? Do the people at Wizards ever pressure you like Richard? Why don't you run a game for us? You got your pretty popular Twitch D&D Twitch channel.
Uh, uh, yeah. Like uh, like we've had a few people ask about that, and we'd have to have somebody to like live bleep out swear words or something. So, God damn
Just play
it.
it in the night. Just call it after dark.
Yeah, because like I told you, we get screaming and yelling. But
Hmm.
no, I've had that before, and a lot of folks who play, they're like, we should just set up a camera and like stream this or do whatever. So it might maybe sometime in the future. Um, it's in one of those. It's in the same category as like could I get together a sketchbook and then get the money for charity
Hmm.
of like yeah, it's about 20 minutes worth of thinking and effort probably set that up. So I could see that happening. Yeah.
At your offices too, like Dragon Talk, they film that there, right? So I mean, there's like space set up for streaming and things like that.
Yeah. 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 Yep. And
Yeah,
then
I've really
there's
expanded that. Like Greg Tito's, I don't know if I'm not sure like who does what, but I think he's kind of like oversees a lot of that sort of thing, like the PR
yes.
and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There's sort
Um,
of Greg and then Bart does a lot of stuff in Pelham Green. Bart Carroll and Pelham Green.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, they put a lot of work into that stuff.
It's a really interesting time in the culture. I was listening to a video the other day, and they were talking. It was just somebody's opinion, but he was saying like, Dungeons and Dragons is not just the books anymore. It's really like a culture
Yeah,
of itself. Like that's just one part of it, but like, and not even like the revenue streams. It's like just playing D&D in general is like really like become a. I mean, it's always been part of our American culture, but it's like really out in the open now. That's one of the best things about it.
yeah.
Especially to an old gamer, it's like, oh, I mean, I was never like embarrassed to say I play D&D, but now it's like everybody knows what that is, and stuff.
I, what I kind of like that it seems to be with fifth edition anyway is the live stream games and the other games that you can find that are just like posted on YouTube, whether they're live or edited or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, it's really showing people like like how you're playing the game.
Yes.
Whereas I think from the outside before, you might look at D&D and what you see is like a stack of books and people saying like, well, you use polyhedral dice and math to make adventure, and it's sort of like this. There's this barrier of like that seems mathy and maybe not fun, but when it just cuts to the game and there's people and you're like basically being idiots, like
Yeah.
or just like pretending, playing pretend. Uh, then that to me is a huge thing. It just cuts right to the heart of it. It's like here's our game and it's fun. Take a look, and then the reverse part becomes easier. It's like if I can get to that fun part, I'll learn some rules. Yeah.
Well, that's and one of the best things about fifth edition is it just straight up says in the book, like, look, if you don't want to use these rules, I mean, I kind of look at D&D as just like a term for getting away with being a kid, where you're just like, hey, you want to come over and play? Because it just sounds weird when you're like a 40-year-old man doing that. But if you say like,
Yeah.
oh, you want to play D&D, then it's like a thing. It's something.
Yeah. we, we may even be you and I as adults, we may even be worse than that because the kids sometimes can play without rules.
Yeah.
Like, better make rules or these adults will fight.
Hmm. And sometimes you almost have to change the rules just to keep the players on their toes.
Yeah.
Be like, well, this
Oh,
monster, it's not supposed to be this way. It's like, well, it is now in my world.
yeah.
Let's see. Here's another question from Fantasy Grounds College, and then we got another one. Fantasy Grounds College is aggressively helpful too. If anybody needs help with Fantasy Grounds College, you can check those guys out. But they say, question, Richard, do you have any more directives to create any more variations or choices of art portraits for Wizards of the Coast consumers? Maybe it means like in D&D Beyond, I think, because a lot of your images show up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Um,
like when you go to pick the character portrait, a lot of them are just headshots of things you've drawn.
well, I can tell you this. I'm for sure going to do that. I was just talking to Adam Lee yesterday,
Mhm.
and we're talking about NPCs of different types and stuff like that. So I'm gonna do a whole bunch, a buttload.
There you go.
When I get them done, I'll put them on my Twitter.
Cool. Let's see. Here's another one from Andy Komu. When you're drawing, do you need to be in a specific location to get your thoughts on paper, or do you basically get ideas anytime and draw them?
I have like usually I guess it applies to this apartment too. I pretty much have a sketchbook in every room. Um, and when I go to meetings, I'm like the bad kid in junior high who's like, "Are you paying attention?" Because I'm always drawing. Uh, so I draw anywhere and everywhere I possibly can. But there's sort of a little bit of a difference. If I really have to make a polished kind of drawing, then I want like a nice flat surface. But I doodle everywhere, and that tends to be where the ideas come from. So if you can get a little idea down, great.
During a meeting, you could just say you were working. You'd be like, no, no, I'm inspired. I'm concept drawing.
Yeah, they know what I'm doing. I usually there was one meeting we had. I was sitting there doodling, and we're talking. I'd throw in stuff every once in a while, and then finally it was like, "What are you drawing?" And it was like, Well, I started drawing these two weird toes, and then I drew Emmy and Kate's faces on them because they're toe heads.
Oh, yeah, and speaking of drawing coworkers, you'd mentioned that you added to your work of Zvart with your
Yes.
newest coworker that's coming on Monday, Kate Welch.
Yeah, yeah. She just got Zvarted yesterday. Um, with Nathan Stewart was proud of me about that. He's like, you gotta Zvart her. I was like, it's not a complicated process. Um, so I had to get that done to get Nathan off me. So he's like, did you get the Vart yet? Did you do the Vart? Um,
Do they
yeah,
use those around the office? Are they like on your badges or whatever? Like, nope, you're not fully employee until you get started by Richard.
Chris Lindsay yesterday was saying he wants some like business cards for some of us with like just this Vart on them. So I think next week I'm gonna make us a few.
Nice.
Just like give everybody a few to, well, maybe not everybody, but at least me and Chris and a couple other folks will get some Zvart business cards. But
Professional Zvart.
totally, yeah.
What are those, like earth elemental type creatures? I
They
want to
are
say.
weird. There's like this mad demigodish type critter who apparently was quite ugly because Zvarts are sort of like clones of him that he made.
Okay.
Um, and he was like a greedy little guy, so he made all these greedy little clone minions of himself. You gotta like yourself a lot to make like clones of yourself.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so the two little Zvarts in the actual book are they look pretty much alike. You know, it's slight tweaks, but all of us D&D Zvarts I made a little more unique.
Yeah, there's so much like neat little tidbits that you can go off of, like in things like the monster manual, like that. Like it just might be one line, like, "Oh yeah, some demigod makes clones of himself," and it's if you're just skimming through the book, there's so much stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as an artist or a player, a gamer, or a dungeon master, you might it's neat to just find those little things that just really capture your imagination. Like, I like that. I'm gonna build a whole adventure around it.
Yeah, I used to have like two tiers of it when I first started DMing. I literally would go through and sort of like just look at the pictures
Hmm.
and say, "Oh, that's a neat monster. I can picture that. So it's going in my game."
Oh yeah, I'm sure a ton of people did that with like all those classic old Trampier pieces and Errol Otis and all those guys from back in the day.
Oh, totally. But there used to be the stuff like I remember in the original Fiend Folio that I think it was the Kuatoa had like a great big write up. Like it was just this really long thing, and I was like, well, I'm gonna DM tomorrow night. I'm not gonna read that right now. But then later on, when I went back and read the whole thing, I was like, oh man, there's like 100 ideas in here, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yeah, I
Lo-
love that stuff. You can get ideas anywhere.
oh yeah, a long entry for back then that was probably like it's a quarter of the page.
Yeah,
It used to be
exactly.
like there's like 6 monsters on each page or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
Well, here's a technical question from Cardboard Fortress, who's a Nerdarchy friend and a game designer and graphic designer himself. He says, "Question: Photoshop, Illustrator, or other for D&D work?"
For me, all of my original baseline stuff is done in pencil, and then I scan it,
Hmm.
take it into Photoshop, and I color in Photoshop.
Okay.
Um,
So you don't have a Wacom or anything?
yeah, I have a Wacom. I'm actually talking to you right now on a Wake
Oh, really?
Cintiq companion.
Oh, nice. Oh, here's another art question from Cardboard Fortress. He's trying to up his game here, I guess. Has D&D ever considered more drastic art styles for main or other products?
It's really funny that is one of the things this year that like I say I'm pushing for some of that stuff this year, which means you may not see it for another year.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but yeah, I actually kind of started a wall in the office, and I was kind of like, we always see those artists that it's like they don't, it's like they don't quite suit our current D&D style, but I love their work. So I started spreading the word around the office. I was like, we all have artists like that. Put their name on a piece that they've done, print it out, and put it on that wall, because we want to start getting like widening our variety.
Okay.
Um, and it's already, the wall has already started to fill up with a whole bunch of things, and so now it's a matter of getting a neat project and aligning the right artists with a cool project, because that's sort of the key to success, is sort of like, not only is your art really cool in this way, but it would be really good for this project, and then you put them together and you get something great. So I'm fishing for those for sure.
That's where art direction comes in. Do you guys get a lot of like just submissions of people like, hey, here's my art, like hire
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah. No, we get a lot of people. I personally get a lot of people who will send me samples, or like ask me to give them sort of a portfolio review, and I've kind of done that for like 10 years. I've gone to conventions and done portfolio reviews and all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. And I always say this, or at least try to explain it to people, where it's like if you're an artist and you want some advice, or you want some like help on getting where you want to go, like send some stuff into artdrop@wizards.com, um, or you can like sort of hit me up on something on Twitter or Instagram, like send me a link, because I, from my end, I want more artists. like, like more great artists works good for me. And I find it really awesome to try to see what somebody does, and then say, hey, maybe if you tried this, or like if you could help give somebody a hand up. I love doing that. So
What is art drop at wizards.com? Is that like just a email submission thing?
yep, yep,
Oh,
yeah, and that's all one word, art drop, all
hmm.
one word, @wizards.com. That's sort of an email, just open submission that we've had forever. Uh,
I've probably got a pretty big inbox, I would imagine.
it sort of flows through, and we have, we sort of curate it, uh, like we can't reply to absolutely everybody. um, Even my personal story, there's some of my early stuff, I think I sent to art drop, and I didn't hear anything till about a year later,
Oh, really?
and that was to apply for the Magic lead concept artist job.
Oh,
um, so so that's what I tell people too. It's like, don't get disheartened.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's all about, if your work suits a certain job, and when that job is coming up, or when it's open, and all that stuff. And yeah.
That reminds me. I've always been curious about this with like the artwork for Magic. Like,
Mhm.
there's got to be times when you might make a big piece, and that could be so many cards, because it's
Yeah.
like a card might like just zoom in like out the window of the castle, and it's like, now there's a door of the castle, that's another card. So it's like you can really get a lot of mileage out of art for Magic, I bet.
Yeah. It's what I find interesting over the years is, like, when I first came here, like I said, a little more than 10 years ago. It was right around. I started, I think, just after they finished Lorwyn. Helped out a
Okay.
little bit on Shadowmoor, for Magic anyway. Um, but when I first came onto Magic, we had this big wall, and it would fill up with basically like oil paintings or gouache paintings. Like, all the paintings, people would mail them in, and they'd come on the wall, and I was like, this is so cool. And then I watched it gradually over the years as everyone sort of adopts digital,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
to the point now where you get maybe half a dozen paintings coming in. You're like, oh, there's some paintings in. You run over to see what you got. But yeah, there are, especially the artists. Some of the artists who work traditionally, and things like that, have such a level of detail, um, that it's crazy. I always used to laugh at Wayne Reynolds, where his pieces look very detailed, uh, but he actually works quite small, and he
Oh yeah.
uses tiny, tiny brushes. And
He produces a lot of stuff. It's like, man, there's so many Wayne Reynolds pieces
oh
out
yeah,
there.
yeah, he's been going forever. I love the hell out of Wayne. He's one of my favorite human beings in the world.
I love his art. I don't know him personally, but his art is out of this world to me. So many times when you're like looking for something like like some art for your character, it ends up being like, oh, yep, there's a Wayne Reynolds that
Yeah,
fits
Wayne's
the
got
bill exactly.
it. Yeah.
Here's a question from Zarif Gaming. I'm kind of curious about this myself. Out of all the demon lords, which did you enjoy drawing the most?
Wow. Ooh,
They're all so different. It's like I'd imagine there's different reasons for each
yeah,
one, you know.
that's really tricky. I think um, I think Demogorgon, because I remember when I kind of got the Demogorgon done, I was sort of like, oh yes, I like this. Like this is sort of a good direction. Now I got to make the rest as good as this one, or to kind of
Hmm.
match this one. So I was pretty happy. But I have to say my favorite Demon Lord in terms of just generally is Orcus. He's so gross. And
Yeah, yeah, right.
he's,
Undead
yeah,
stuff's just ugh.
yeah.
But yeah, Demogorgon, he's just got that weirdness, you know, like most of the other ones are like they're humanoid or you know they're like a minotaur like Baphomet, but it's like nope, like a two-headed baboon with tentacle arms. It's like that's pretty strange.
Yeah. And with all those too, the fun part was being able to take a swing at those because
Yeah.
like because like I said, I've gamed like since I was a kid, and then to finally be like, hey, do your take on these. And I actually I printed out different versions that have been done of the various Demon Lords across the years, and printed them out, put them all up on a whiteboard, invited a bunch of people to a meeting, and then said, you know, you guys are you people are the big D&D fans. Tell me what I can change and what I can't. So what can I draw here so I don't ruin your childhood? And what can I draw to make your childhood cooler? And we had that big meeting, and then I went out and drew everything. So it was that sort of excitement, but also like don't screw it up. Feeling.
Yeah, that seems like a big part of the stewardship of D&D too. Is like we kind of mentioned that earlier. It's just like really acknowledging that like look, people have been playing this game for like 40 plus years and they
Yeah,
all have different, you know, views, so like really trying to like honor and incorporate that into the design and the writing and the art seems like a big responsibility that you guys take seriously.
yeah, totally. Because it's just one of those things. I feel like anyway, like for me personally too, it's ingrained in there. And and if I watched a movie and Yoda's acting like a jerk, and I'm like, that's not Yoda, and I'm, you know.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of level of like, yeah, we gotta take a little thought and do this correctly. So we try our best. Yeah,
Yeah, and all you guys are gamers too, so there's like you just said, there's that aspect too, where it's like, ooh, I want to, you know, I'm interested in creating and sharing like what I feel about this character, or this monster, or whatever.
yeah, for sure. That's where it almost gets into like a D&D game, where it's like
Yeah.
everyone's gonna interpret it a little different, um, but everyone's gonna have a cool idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see, got a couple more questions here. Is Fantasy Grounds College. Does your creative team often get stifled by the layout team in regarding space and page count for products?
There's a few sort of questions there. In actual fact, the writer has some leeway. Um, so sometimes the writer may cut some content or add some content. Um, by far, it's easier to sort of like cut down some content if we have some back pages that are blank. Then we can always fill that with artwork and stuff like that, like we did in Out of the Abyss. Um, or we can do like let's put in another double page spread piece of art, or let's do a bigger version of this map or whatever. Um, but the layout team doesn't really dictate; they're sort of rolling with the content.
Yeah. I do layout for a living in my muggle job, so I know exactly what you mean. It's
Yeah,
like, you know,
you gotta be flexible.
yeah.
That's where bless Emmy Tangi. she's a she's our savior of layout graphic design, layout person, graphic designer. She's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, well, the evidence is right there on the
Yeah,
shelf.
yeah.
Yeah. Here's a question from Exeneer. How many artists do you manage?
Do you know that's the thing? Kate manages a lot more than me. Uh, unlike a book, she may have, I think, about 30 or more that she's sort of juggling. Could even be more than that. Um, I manage a variable amount depending on what I'm doing. See, but like I have a concept push coming up where I actually have three artists They're going to be in house with us for 3 weeks. Um,
That
so
sounds
we'll
fun.
fly them in like we're getting Alexei Briclo to come in from Paris, kind of thing. And we got Max Dunbar who worked on the comic, who's coming from Canada, and we got Darkin who lives pretty close to us here. All that stuff. So they'll come in and they'll sit with us for 3 weeks. I'll have briefs for them. We'll go through and we'll just make stuff. So I work with fewer artists throughout the year, um, but they tend to be more focused, like kind of projects.
Hmm. That's got to be fun
Super
for you
fun.
too, just to meet new people and new artists and talk shop.
I love it. We always have, because I ran the what we call that when we bring the artists in is we call it a concept push,
Hmm.
and I always ran the concept pushes for Magic for years, and I sort of brought the concept push idea over with me to D&D. So for me, it's great because I was, yeah, I have artists that I've worked with before, and I'm like, I'm going to bring you in to do some stuff, and I have new artists who haven't tried it before, and I'm like, oh, give it a try and have some fun. And it's really cool to just see the whole thing come together.
Um, I forgot to bring it up earlier, but you had mentioned like doing like portfolio reviews at conventions. Do you get out and go to many conventions throughout the year? I know sometimes that can be a grueling schedule for a lot of people to like keep up with them.
Yeah, well, we usually do one or I usually do one or two a year, um, and I've done more than that depending on if we need them. Um, but it's been sort of a this year is I'm still figuring out this year.
Yeah. Well, you got
uh,
Emerald Cities. Is that this weekend? It was pretty soon, right?
yeah, I think Emerald City is coming right up.
Yeah,
If
that's like
not,
right in
it's
your
already,
back door, right? Or backyard.
yeah. I'm lucky that way with some of those events. I usually know somebody, and I might be able to like get them to give me a pass or sneak me in for a day or something. but I this year I'm having a bit of a tough time because there's so many good conventions that I'm
I
kind of
know, right? It's like I want to go to all of them,
yeah,
but I
and I'm
actually
thinking
have to work.
I definitely can't go to all of them. But it's like I want to go to this one.
I want to go to Gary Con. That's the one I'd like to hit up. I haven't been to that one,
That
but
was
that
right.
seems like a pretty cool.
Yeah, that was right at the top of my head too when I was saying that.
Yeah.
I've heard everybody mention it and sort of I'd love to go to that.
Hmm. I think I'm gonna go hit Origins. I like that one because A, I'm in Ohio, and B, it's just a really big, cool convention. They got a really strong Wizards presence there. It was awesome last year. So
Yep. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard good things too about was it Dragon Con?
yeah, is that the one in Atlanta? I hear that one's like really big for like a lot of cosplayers go all out for that one. So I like
Yes.
that kind of stuff. I remember the first time I went to Gen Con, I actually felt weird because I wasn't wearing a costume because it's like so many people cosplay and wear costumes. It's crazy.
Yeah, because it was Danny Hertel was telling me about that, and she of course does it
Yeah,
right.
yeah, the goblin stuff and everything.
Yeah.
We ran into her and Holly at Origins.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So as a fan, like I first heard of Holly because I was super into Mass Effect, and she used to cosplay as Commander Shepard. So I
Yeah.
was like, "That's Commander Shepard, Commander Holly." Uh, there's an interesting art type question. What sort of setting and or theme would you be most excited to do or find artists for?
Um. I tell you. Oh, it's got to be Planescape. Um. I think. I
You just
think
made a
the.
lot of fans, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like you said, Planescape. Does that mean they're going to do Planescape this year? They already working on Planescape.
I think Tony DiLizzi laid down such a
Oh yeah.
awesome foundation for that, and it's so, and he just blew the doors off of like, it's like, do you know what goes here? Anything.
Hmm.
And
It's like he's like the Bram of Dark Sun for Planescape.
exactly, yeah. So I would definitely say Planescape because it also seems like a thing where such a wide variety of artists could just hop in and do a piece and it would sort of like fit in this weird scope of like all this craziness.
Hmm.
So yeah, if I had my druthers, I would take a whole year and get some of the best artists I know and just do the hell out of Planescape.
Would you get Tony DiTerlizzi back?
Oh, if I could,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's still working, right? I mean, I still see
Oh
him
yeah,
putting
oh yeah.
stuff out.
Yeah, he helped me with. We had like a 25th anniversary article I was writing up for Don Murin, and Tony contributed some stuff to that, and he just had a big show at the Norman Rockwell Museum.
Oh wow.
Um, so yeah, oh, he's 100% still around.
Yeah, I think
Whenever.
that's sometimes gets lost with like, like fantasy artists. It's like you guys are artists. I mean, it's like yeah, sure, you might work in the D&D space, but it's like you do other shit. It's like I can do more than just draw orcus. Okay.
Oh, there's a lot of people like that. There's been a couple people over the years that actually have sort of a fantasy artist like pseudonym or persona, and then they have like a fine art, you know,
Yeah,
sort of
even like
creative
Stefan
face.
Picorni from Dwarven Forge, he's like a classically trained like art like sculptor and artist and stuff. Like he does more than just make dungeon tiles.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
totally.
that's what he does for a living, but
There's some Michelangelos out there.
yeah. Let's see, there's a bunch of questions rolling in now. Let's see here. Is this a question? I'm not seeing a question here. Okay, maybe these terms are artist specific. I'm not sure. We have several artists. This is from James Leslie. We have several artists here at the comic shop, but their avenues.
Oh, just froze up.
Oh, it was me. Hmm.
Sorry about that. Am I back?
Oh no.
Can you see me or hear me?
Okay, people. Oh, there we go. I can hear you both now. They're saying. Oh, people are saying, okay, we're both back now, but I cannot see or hear Richard.
I'll boot.
That's weird. So they can see me and hear Richard. Well,
I'll
guys,
step back out and log back in.
there we go. I was sitting there talking like, I guess he doesn't like my comment about that. He didn't say anything. Okay, so I guess Richard was gonna log out and log back in. So you just get to listen to me ramble on while he does that. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened. I think there was an internet hiccup on my end. Cut
Can you
out
see
for a
me
second.
now?
Yep. I can hear you and see you.
Oh, so we're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Oh no, that was me. I think my internet had a hiccup here. Somebody had asked, I think it's an art-related question. I don't know what these terms mean, but it sounds like they can maybe use your help. We have several artists here at the comic shop, but their avenues for teaching are restricted to NASCAD and NSCC. Is there ways or avenues you would recommend to help them develop? I don't know what that means. Is that like an art thing?
NASCAD, I believe, is Nova Scotia College of Art and Design.
Oh.
So this sounds like some folks from back home my way.
Oh, okay.
Some East Coast Canadians there, maybe. Is nowadays I think the world's kind of changed. There's a lot of good tutorials on YouTube. There's a lot of great artists, sites and things like that, where you can go look at tutorials. And I think there's a lot of great ways where you can glean that information if you kind of dig through. I think one of the things I might try to do, or I've been trying to do too, is like I posted a little while back a link to Cynthia Shepard's YouTube channel, where she does like live painting stuff and sort of tutorials about how to traditionally paint and things like that. So I think if if these folks are still listening, and we didn't lose them in the blip.
No, I still see him chatting in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say go out there and look for stuff. In the meantime, this year I'm going to try to keep on my Twitter just sending good links where people can go and watch some good art training kind of stuff.
So there you go. Just follow Richard on Twitter, and all your art questions will be answered.
I'll try my best to get some good folks up there.
And then I guess we'll finish up with this one from AJ Kenny, who's this is one of our staff writers, and he asks, "Did you ever work with Christopher Rush?" I don't know who that is.
I did not. No, I did not.
But there you go. Simple answer.
I'm sorry.
All right. No, that's cool. You mean you haven't worked with every other fantasy artist in the world, Richard? What's the matter with you?
It's a Canadian thing, I gotta say. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
So, guys, Canada just put a link to Richard's Twitter in the chat. It's also in the description down below. And we're just past the hour mark. And so I would like to thank Richard for hanging out. Thank everybody for coming and hanging out with us today. Are you heading into the office now, or are you working from home today?
Yep, I'm gonna pack up after this. I gotta walk the dog, and then I'm gonna head down to the office and see if I can wrangle Mike. I gotta wake. It's almost noon. I gotta wake Mike up.
Cool. Well, thanks again for hanging out, Richard. Definitely appreciate it. And again, thanks for all your questions and everything, guys. It was awesome. And until next time, stay nerdy.
All right. Thanks for having me.